Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. Out here, 12 miles from the nearest neighbor, I thought I'd found peace. No noise, no rules, just forest, steel, and silence. But then they came. Smiling, clipboard-wielding tyrants in khakis. Now it's war, and I've got cameras, evidence, and nothing left to lose. I never wanted neighbors. Not the noisy kind, not the nosy kind, and especially not the clipboard-wielding kind who consider khaki vests and laminated bylaws suitable for casual wear. That's why I bought 12 acres of old farmland way out in the hills of Rutherford County, Tennessee, a forgotten patch of earth surrounded by trees and a rusting wire fence with a sagging barn, a creaky front porch, and just enough silence to keep a man sane. After my divorce, I wasn't looking for community. I was looking for insulation, peace, fiber optic internet, and a second chance. I found all of that in the Randall place, or as the locals still called it, Old Sutton Farm. Structurally, the house was a disaster when I bought it. Leaking roof, raccoons in the attic, plumbing straight out of the Dust Bowl. But I didn't care. I'd audited government assets that were in worse shape. I rebuilt it from the ground up, kept the original beams where I could, laid in smart sensors, installed a self-contained backup generator, and put in a full security system with thermal night vision and redundant power storage. I don't half-ass things, especially not when I'm the one who has to live with the result. My nearest neighbors, if you could call them that, were over a quarter-mile away, residents of a shiny new development called Stone Point Estates. Their red brick driveways, synchronized lawn sprinklers, and 8-foot privacy fences were visible only from the top of my south ridge. Their signs read, "A master-planned community." Every time I drove past the entrance, I swore the brick columns judged my dusty old Tacoma like it wasn't HOA compliant. The first month, everything was fine. I cut brush, poured concrete footers, restored the barn, and even got a few chickens. No drama. That is, until the welcome wagon rolled in. It was a Tuesday morning. I was outside leveling gravel for the north walkway when I saw a white Lexus creeping up my drive like it was inspecting property for a foreclosure auction. Out stepped 3 people, a slim blonde woman in designer sunglasses and tennis shoes too clean for actual tennis, a man with an iPad tucked under his arm, and another guy who looked like a walking liability waiver. The woman waved like we were old friends. "Hi there. You must be the new owner. I'm Karen Blaylock, president of the Stone Point Estates Homeowners Association. We just wanted to formally welcome you to the neighborhood." I nodded slowly. "I'm not in the neighborhood." Karen laughed politely, like I'd made a joke. "Oh, don't be modest. Your lot technically borders our community expansion phase. We think of you as part of the greater Stone Point family." I leaned on my shovel. "This land's not part of any HOA. I confirmed that before I bought it. County line ends at the ridge." Karen's smile didn't even twitch. "Well, that's a matter of perspective. Many of our residents are concerned about visual cohesion in the area. You know, consistency of sightlines, maintenance standards, community value. We'd love to invite you to our next general meeting, just to introduce yourself." The man with the iPad added, "And we have a non-member participation clause. It's purely voluntary, of course, but we do encourage alignment with the community code." I wiped sweat from my brow and gave them the most polite "get off my land" I could muster. "I appreciate the visit, but I'm not interested. My land, my rules. I'm not joining any HOA, and I don't need alignment with anything. Good day." Karen's sunglasses tilted down slightly. She wasn't used to hearing no, especially not with boundary markers and survey pins already in the ground. "Well," she said coolly, "we hope you'll reconsider. It's in everyone's best interest that we maintain community integrity." I watched them walk back to their Lexus. The guy with the iPad took a few pictures of my solar rack on the way out. That was the first red flag. A week later, I got a letter in the mailbox. No stamp, no postmark. Just typed text on HOA stationery and a tone so syrupy it might have come with a pancake. It gently reminded me of the voluntary landscaping guidelines and encouraged me to trim my hedges, lower my fence line, and consider relocating the solar panel array to a more discreet quadrant of the lot. It ended with, "Stone Point thrives on harmony. Let's keep it that way." I crumpled it and tossed it in the burn barrel. A few nights after that, I noticed slow-moving headlights crawling past my front fence. I don't get traffic. My property isn't on the way to anything. I checked the cameras. A black SUV idling at the road, then reversing, then returning half an hour later. I didn't recognize the vehicle, but the tag frame said, "Proud to be Stone Point." I started sleeping with the security app open. Then came the second visit. No Lexus this time, just a man in a golf cart with a vest labeled HOA Patrol. He stopped at my gate, took out a laser measure, and aimed it at my fence. I opened the barn door and stepped out with a drill in my hand. He bolted like a rabbit. At that point, I did what I always do when people start acting like rules don't apply. I documented everything. I uploaded the footage, filed a trespass incident with the sheriff, and installed a second wave of cameras. Thermal, motion-triggered, cloud-synced. I didn't say a word to them. But I knew this wasn't over, because when people like Karen don't get what they want politely, they start getting creative. It didn't take long before the strange visits turned into something uglier. At first, it was almost funny, like the HOA was playing neighborhood spy games. A few days after the golf cart incident, I came home from a supply run in town to find my mailbox hanging half open, a folded sheet of printer paper barely tucked inside. No envelope, no signature, just bold black text across the top. "You are out of alignment with the Stone Point community aesthetic." The rest was a list of items: my solar panel rack, the height of my fencing, excessive visibility of utility fixtures, and even my barn's non-standard paint coloration. The letter closed with the line, "Compliance is not optional. You've been warned." I scanned it, time-stamped it, and filed it away. I wasn't rattled. Yet. But that changed the next time I checked the security feed from my north camera. Two figures in blue vests were on my property. I watched them walk 20 feet past the fence line, laser measures out, one of them stepping right through my vegetable bed to take readings along the foundation of my barn. They moved quickly and deliberately, clearly not amateurs. I scrolled back and caught their arrival on camera. A gray pickup with a Stone Point maintenance team magnet on the driver's side door. No plates visible, of course. I checked the timestamp. They came while I was gone for exactly 28 minutes. That was too precise to be coincidence. Someone was watching my schedule. That night, I walked the fence line with a flashlight and a sidearm. I didn't expect a confrontation, but I was done being passive. These people weren't just annoying. They were crossing legal lines. The next morning, I filed a formal police report for trespassing, submitted the footage, and sent certified letters to both the county sheriff's department and the HOA's listed office address stating, in clear legal terms, that my property was private, not under HOA jurisdiction, and that further encroachment would result in prosecution. 3 days later, I got a reply. Not from the sheriff, not from any county office, but from a Stone Point Estates legal liaison on letterhead that looked a little too professional to be community-run. The tone was sharp. It claimed that Stone Point Estates reserves the right to enforce visual and functional harmony in adjacent properties affecting the community identity, and that refusal to comply with standard neighborhood aesthetics may result in further action. There was a threat between every line. No law cited, no jurisdiction claimed, just veiled language about expectations and standards. I handed the letter off to my lawyer in Nashville, who nearly laughed herself out of her chair. She confirmed what I already knew. They had no authority. Zero. Not over me. Not over my land. Their covenant didn't extend a single inch beyond their platted development boundary. I was a stubborn fence post in their path to aesthetic domination. I thought that might be the end of it. Then I started finding footprints, not tire tracks. Footprints, deep, direct, and recent. They showed up just behind the tree line, north side, where the cameras only caught motion if something got close enough to the fence line. Someone was watching me, waiting, probing. I moved 2 thermal sensors deeper into the woods and added a 360-degree camera dome above the barn. I also added a failsafe, a second recording node hidden in the attic with redundant power, streaming everything off-site. One evening, just before dusk, I heard a car slow roll past the end of my drive. I stayed inside and pulled up the live feed. There it was again, the black SUV. This time, it didn't just stop, it parked. I zoomed in. Karen. She sat behind the wheel for about 5 minutes, staring down my driveway, tapping something on her phone. Then she drove away. No note this time. No letter, just a presence. The next morning, another envelope appeared in my mailbox. It was handwritten. I'd hate for something unpleasant to happen out here. You're so isolated. That was it. No signature, no return address. I had it tested for fingerprints and set up a perimeter alarm. The night after that, my south floodlight clicked on at 3:27 a.m. The camera feed showed someone darting back into the woods. A dark hoodie, maybe a man, maybe not. Too fast to catch a face, but they knew where the cameras were. And they were testing me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with the lights off and a cup of strong coffee in hand, watching the monitors. Something was coming. And I was ready. It happened on a Friday night, quiet, uneventful, the kind of evening I usually spent rewatching old noir films with a glass of rye and my phone face down. I'd just finished The Maltese Falcon and was getting ready to shut everything down when the security lights flared like lightning behind the living room blinds. At first, I thought it was an animal tripping the infrared, maybe a deer or one of the neighborhood raccoons getting bold again. But then came the pounding. 3 loud, deliberate bangs on the door. Not a knock, a demand. Then came the shouting. "Step out of the house! Hands where we can see 'em!" I froze. Another voice, this one closer to the window. "Is there a weapon inside? Are you alone in the house?" The way the voices cut through the dark, amplified by adrenaline and megaphones, I couldn't tell if it was real or some deeply twisted prank. But when I edged toward the front window and peeked through the corner of the blinds, I saw flashlights, 3 of them, cutting across my yard like searchlights over a prison yard. Blue and red lights bounced against the trees. My driveway was blocked by 2 marked cruisers and 1 unmarked SUV, all of them still running. The fear hit late, like my body was still buffering. I moved on instinct. I grabbed my wallet, took my phone, pulled up my camera feed, all cams recording, and walked toward the door slowly, both hands up. When I opened the door, one of the officers leveled his flashlight directly at my chest and barked, "Stop! Don't move!" I didn't. "I'm unarmed," I said slowly. "My name's Tim Randall. This is my property. I live here alone." The beam dipped slightly, but no one lowered their stance. Another officer stepped up with a hand hovering near his holster. "Sir, we received a 911 call reporting possible domestic violence and threats with a firearm from this residence. Screaming, banging, something about a hostage." I blinked. "That's a lie. Are you saying there are no other individuals inside?" "There never were. I've been watching a movie alone for the last 2 hours. You're welcome to review the footage from my security system, but unless you have a warrant, you're not coming inside." One of the cops shot a glance at the others. They weren't expecting that. My calmness, my clarity. "Do you have identification?" I handed over my license and, for good measure, my federal auditor's ID from my old job, expired but real. That one always carried a little weight, even now. They huddled under one of the cruiser's lights, whispering just out of earshot. I stepped back from the porch and waited, arms crossed. Finally, the tallest one returned, face tight. "Mr. Randall, we're going to file a welfare check response. Since no threat was found and you've refused entry, we'll be noting that you were uncooperative and showed signs of evasiveness." I laughed once, short and sharp. "You just stormed my land on a false tip and I asked for a warrant. That's not evasive. That's constitutional." He didn't like that. None of them did. But they also didn't have anything to hold me on. I watched them leave slowly, 1 car at a time, their lights killing the darkness and strobing pulses as they reversed out of my drive. The last one lingered an extra second. High beams pointed directly into my house. I didn't go back to bed. Instead, I downloaded all the footage, front yard, gate camera, the thermal overlay showing no motion whatsoever before the lights and sirens rolled in. No screaming, no one else. Just me and a digital library of proof. Then I queued up the tape from earlier that evening, around 9:55. There it was, a black SUV, the same one from before, same make, same HOA placard. It parked just outside the tree line by the ridge, behind the bushes where one of my camera angles caught it in partial silhouette. A figure stepped out, blonde, athletic, phone in hand. Karen. She paced in tight circles, phone pressed to her ear, checked her watch, then ducked back into the vehicle and drove off. At 10:04, the cruisers showed up. I played it again. 8 minutes between her arriving and the cops storming my porch. Coincidence? Not a chance. By sunrise, I'd filed a formal complaint with the county sheriff's department. I attached still frames, time codes, GPS data from my cameras, and a notarized affidavit stating I was home alone, no guests, and that there were no grounds for the call. I emailed the entire package to the sheriff's internal review board, CCing the district attorney's office for good measure. No one responded that day, or the next. Instead, the HOA mailbox I passed on my way into town had a new poster on the bulletin board. Community safety is everyone's responsibility. If you see something, say something. And someone had spray painted a small message beneath it in red ink. Uncooperative neighbors are dangerous. I didn't write it, but I sure as hell felt like it was meant for me. I thought they'd back off after that night. I thought the complaint I filed, with video, timestamps, GPS logs, and Karen's perfectly coiffed little silhouette caught on camera just minutes before the raid, would at least buy me silence. But this wasn't about facts. It was about pressure. And the next move was anything but subtle. It happened a week later, Thursday night. I'd finally started sleeping again, maybe 3 or 4 hours at a time. The lights outside hadn't gone off in days, and the cameras were backed up to multiple cloud drives. Every alert, every movement, every raccoon that sneezed near the barn was cataloged and time-stamped. That night, at 2:14 in the morning, my phone buzzed. Motion detected, east tree line. I sat up, tapped the screen, and froze. 2 police cruisers. No lights, no sirens, just slow rolling, like they were out for a quiet midnight stroll on federal property. They pulled up silently, their engines low, headlights off. One parked just inside the main gate. The other crept down the gravel path toward the barn, bouncing slightly on the uneven terrain. I watched through my bedroom monitor as 6 officers stepped out. 6, not 3 like last time, and began scanning the property with flashlights. One of them had a thermal monocular. They didn't knock. They didn't call out. They just moved, coordinated, fanned out across my land like they were clearing a drug house or hunting a fugitive. I checked my backup drive, recording. Then I hit the voice system. "Attention," I said clearly through the perimeter speakers. "This is private property outside the jurisdiction of Stone Point Estates or any associated HOA. You are being recorded on multiple high-resolution video systems, and any unlawful entry will result in legal action." They didn't react. One officer angled his flashlight toward the nearest camera and shined directly into it for a solid 10 seconds, like he was trying to burn it out with his gaze alone. Another took a few steps onto the porch and peered into the living room window. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Instead, I hit record on my phone, then called my lawyer. By the time the officers left, about 17 minutes after arrival, they hadn't knocked once. Just scoped the perimeter, peered into the barn windows, then quietly retreated like nothing happened. If I hadn't had cameras, it would have been like they were never there. I filed a second complaint before breakfast. This time, I called the sheriff's office directly. I demanded names, shift records, incident numbers. I wanted to know what the hell was going on and who authorized a stealth visit to private land without a warrant, a call, or probable cause. The deputy on the line tried to play dumb, claimed it was probably just a routine drive-by safety sweep, and that no incident had been logged at my address. Bullshit. They had 6 officers in 2 cars at 2 in the morning, crawling across my property like burglars with badges, and no one wrote it down. By noon, I'd compiled a new report, backed with time-coded surveillance stills from 5 angles, including thermal. I sent it to the county's Internal Affairs Division, the district attorney, and the State Board for Law Enforcement Oversight. I CC'd the local newspaper just for good measure. Still, no one called me back. That evening, I reviewed the footage again, this time frame by frame. I caught a flash of something odd, one of the officers near the tree line, tossing something into the brush. I hiked out the next morning with gloves and a trash bag. After 15 minutes of searching, I found it, a motion sensor wildlife camera. Cheap, retail shelf model, duct taped to a tree. It wasn't mine. It hadn't been there the day before. I took it apart in my workshop. Inside was a micro SD card, standard format. I slotted it into my reader and opened the files. All of them were blank, except the last one. A 5-second clip of me stepping onto my porch during the previous police raid. Arms raised, floodlights blinding me. Someone had placed this camera on my land to monitor my responses. Either HOA goons, or worse, someone with a badge. I didn't bother filing another complaint. I called Marcus. Marcus Fields was my old colleague from the Federal Asset Oversight Office. He'd gone stateside after our division got folded, now working as a compliance liaison between the State Auditor's Bureau and the DA's office. Smart, careful, and too paranoid to trust anyone. My kind of guy. When I laid out what had happened, the false police call, the unsanctioned midnight sweep, the surveillance camera planted on my land, he didn't even pause. "They're testing you," he said, trying to provoke a reaction, make you look unstable, scare you into selling or joining. Classic jurisdictional harassment tactic. Their HOA. How the hell are they pulling strings at the sheriff's department? Marcus sighed. You ever heard of sponsored patrol contracts? Barely. They're legal. Kinda. HOAs can hire off-duty cops as private security. It's not officially a police action, but it walks and talks like one. Problem is, it's only supposed to cover the HOA's own land. If they're sending those patrols onto yours using city or county resources, that's illegal as hell. I leaned back in my chair. Can you help me prove it? He didn't even hesitate. I'll get started, but you better buckle up. If they've got cops on the take, this goes way past local HOA drama. You're about to step on some high-level toes. Good, because I was tired of waiting for justice to show up. Now, I was bringing it with me. I didn't sleep for the next 48 hours, not because I was afraid. Though, let's be honest, having cops crawl across your property in the dead of night does rattle the nerves, but because I was busy. I wasn't just playing defense anymore. I was building a case. Marcus came through faster than I expected. By Sunday evening, he'd already dug up the patrol contract between the Stone Point Estates HOA and the county sheriff's department. It was a sanitized PDF, of course, public-facing, full of vague language about community safety initiatives and voluntary off-duty enforcement visibility. But Marcus also had access to the back-end system, internal memos, shift logs, vendor payment records. And there it was. Two names, Deputy Clark and Officer Menard, listed as community liaisons on contract duty, funded by Stone Point HOA. Same two who'd been on my porch at 10:04 that first night. Same badge numbers, same bullshit. Worse yet, the geographic coverage maps attached to the agreement showed something shocking. My land, clearly outside the HOA boundary, was included in their visible patrol range. Marcus ran the overlay with the official parcel data from the county registrar's office. The HOA had submitted a falsified map. That was no clerical error. That was criminal misrepresentation. Marcus flagged the document and added a note to his internal case file. He suggested I back up everything to an encrypted external drive and store it off-site. I took his advice, made 3 copies, and mailed one to my cousin in Utah, an old game warden with a cabin and a gun collection the size of a state arsenal, just in case. I also sent a notarized statement and full footage archive to a civil rights attorney in Nashville. Her name was Valerie Greer, former state AG litigator turned private practice bulldog. I didn't know her, but Marcus vouched for her, and when I gave her the short version over the phone, she replied with exactly the kind of words I needed to hear. Oh, honey, they picked the wrong introvert. Meanwhile, the HOA wasn't sitting idle either. On Tuesday morning, I received a certified letter delivered by courier. Inside was a cease and desist from the Stone Point HOA Legal Committee, accusing me of creating a threatening atmosphere that endangers the peace and well-being of the surrounding community. Attached were 3 printed stills allegedly from surveillance footage showing me brandishing a firearm on my porch. Only it wasn't a firearm, it was my post hole digger. I'd been replanting an old fence line earlier that week, and the handle of the tool had caught the afternoon light just right. I recognized the moment immediately from my own security feed. The HOA image, though, it was darker, grainer, cropped just enough to obscure the tool's head. The shadows were deepened, contrast boosted, and there was even a slight digital blur around the hands, as if someone had edited the picture to enhance the illusion of a weapon. I scanned the photo into a forensic analysis tool I used back in the audit division. Metadata confirmed what I suspected. The image had been altered. No camera data, no timestamp, just layers and a signature from a free editing app. They were fabricating evidence. This wasn't just harassment anymore. This was entrapment. I forwarded everything to Valerie. She called me back within the hour, half laughing, half furious. This isn't just a civil issue anymore. This is potential felony conduct, filing false police reports, falsifying evidence, conspiracy to intimidate. We're going to sue the HOA, but also loop in the DA for criminal referrals. Good, I said, but I want more than that. Oh, I want to subpoena every patrol report, HOA board meeting transcript, every dime paid to these officers. I want them in front of a judge. I want them under oath. There was a pause. Then she said, "You're speaking my language." And just like that, the game changed. Valerie filed an intent to sue letter the next day, addressed to both the Stone Point HOA and the Sheriff's Department, with copies sent to the county board and the local news station. She demanded a full accounting of the patrol program, a retraction of the cease and desist, and an immediate cessation of any HOA activity involving my land. That same afternoon, a plain black SUV rolled past my property at a crawl. No plates, no markings, just dark windows and a feeling in my gut like someone was taking mental notes. I waved at the camera as it passed. Later that night, while reviewing security footage, I noticed another vehicle, this time parked across the road behind some brush. Headlights off, no movement, just watching. I sent the images to Valerie. "This is retaliation," she said, "and now we can prove it." She prepared an emergency injunction filing to block any further surveillance or unauthorized contact. Meanwhile, Marcus pushed the internal abuse complaint through the state auditor's office, citing misuse of public personnel and deliberate jurisdictional overreach. I was surrounded by predators, but for once I wasn't alone in the woods. This time, I had a hunting party. When the injunction came through on Friday, I finally exhaled. It was temporary, just a 30-day emergency block, but it meant no HOA member, no affiliated security contractor, and no off-duty cop paid by Stone Point could come within 500 feet of my property without risking contempt of court. Valerie moved fast. She wasn't bluffing. The Sheriff's Department got their notice by certified mail, and the HOA's legal office received theirs in person from a deputy U.S. Marshal. Valerie wanted to make a statement. The silence that followed was unnerving. No SUVs idling near the tree line, no patrols rolling by after midnight, not even a passive-aggressive HOA newsletter dropped in my mailbox. For the first time in weeks, my land felt still again. Too still. By Monday, that calm shattered. A thick manila envelope arrived at my P.O. box from a private law firm I didn't recognize. Inside was a formal notice of intent to file suit against me. The plaintiff, Karen Blaylock, in her capacity as president of Stone Point Estates HOA. The claim that I posed a credible and ongoing threat to community peace, had brandished weapons in plain view, engaged in anti-social surveillance, and hindered emergency response operations by refusing police entry. Attached were another set of photographs, this time color-printed, glossy, professionally arranged in a report. But she'd gone too far this time. One image showed me in profile holding what was clearly a shovel, but someone had digitally inserted a rifle stock into the image. The scale was wrong. The shadow was off, but the effort was there. Another image showed me standing near my truck with what looked like a handgun at my waist. Only, I hadn't carried one in years. Zooming in, the so-called gun was the black nylon holster of my work gloves, looped on my belt. It was a forged narrative. A propaganda dossier. I contacted Valerie. She went quiet for a moment after reviewing the scans. "Okay," she said slowly, "this is not civil anymore. We're escalating this." She brought in a certified forensic analyst, Sarah Meets, a 30-year veteran of federal image authentication and court evidence protocol. Sarah examined the photos and concluded that several had undergone substantial digital manipulation, with inconsistencies in metadata, layering, and pixel mapping. She drafted a sworn affidavit and signed under penalty of perjury. That was enough. Valerie filed a motion to dismiss Karen's preemptive suit with prejudice, meaning it couldn't be refiled, and filed our own civil suit in federal court, Randall versus Stone Point Estates HOA, citing harassment, defamation, conspiracy, violation of civil liberties, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. But we weren't done. Marcus dug deeper into HOA communications. Through public meeting logs and old newsletters, he tracked a recurring theme: pressure from Karen and the board to resolve the Randall parcel. They'd apparently been trying to buy up adjacent lots to make way for a planned clubhouse and private road expansion. My land was in the way. There it was, the motive. I was never just an annoyance to them. I was an obstacle to a $1 million plan. Digging further, Marcus traced campaign donations from the HOA to 2 sitting county commissioners, both of whom had approved the off-duty patrol contract despite red flags. He marked the trail in a separate file, sent it to Valerie, and said, "We might be looking at RICO violations." Meanwhile, I filed a report with the State Board of Peace Officer Standards and Training. It outlined the role of Deputy Clark and Officer Menard, their moonlighting activities, and the fabricated evidence submitted under their names. Valerie attached the same in her civil filing, with copies to the Attorney General's office. That's when things got loud. On Thursday evening, as I pulled back into my driveway after picking up groceries, I saw flashing lights. Not cop cars this time, but media vans. Local Channel 7, WRCB News, and even an independent investigative reporter from Knoxville were parked by the fence. Someone had leaked the story. They asked questions I'd been waiting to answer for weeks. Yes, I had video proof of fabricated trespasses. Yes, I'd been falsely accused. Yes, I had forensic reports. Yes, I was taking it to court. And no, I wasn't going to settle quietly. That night, the HOA's boardroom flooded with angry emails from neighbors who'd had no idea what their dues were funding. Karen released a one-paragraph statement calling the accusations baseless and politically motivated. It was too late. The storm was coming, and I had the receipts. The media exposure did more than just stir public outrage. It lit a fuse under the county administration. The morning after the story aired, I was contacted by an internal affairs officer from the sheriff's department. He asked for a formal interview regarding Deputy Clark and Officer Menard, emphasizing that this was now part of an internal investigation opened under external pressure. I didn't have to guess where that pressure came from. Valerie had forwarded her entire case file to the state attorney general's office the day before. Meanwhile, the HOA's attempt to control the narrative backfired spectacularly. Karen Blaylock scheduled a press conference outside the Stone Point Community Clubhouse, flanked by a pair of HOA board members in suits and sunglasses. I watched it live online. She claimed she had acted out of concern for community safety, accused me of hoarding surveillance tools to monitor neighbors, and reiterated her claim that I had displayed firearms in a threatening manner. What she didn't know was that the entire time she was speaking, Valerie had submitted our motion to unseal the full subpoenaed communications from the HOA's internal Slack channels and board emails. And when the court approved it, it was like pulling the curtain back on a very ugly play. Dozens of messages revealed the true motive. Karen and several board members had been trying for months to pressure me off the land. One message read, "He's the last holdout. If we push him just a little harder, he'll crack or sell." Another from Karen herself. "Let's try again on Friday night. Loud noise. Maybe call in a welfare check." It wasn't just harassment. It was coordinated psychological warfare. We compiled the communications into a multi-page exhibit and filed them with our updated complaint. At the same time, the civil court approved our motion for expedited discovery and granted Valerie's request to depose key HOA members under oath. Karen was the first to be scheduled. Around this time, a new thread emerged. A quiet man named Jacob Greer reached out via Marcus. Jacob was a retired land assessor who had once worked as an external consultant during the HOA's expansion phase. Years prior, he still had copies of the original survey plats and environmental assessments. When we compared his data to the most recent filings Stone Point submitted to the county for zoning and infrastructure, guess what? There were discrepancies. Serious ones. The HOA had submitted revised boundaries that included nearly 2 acres of land not legally under their purview, including part of my property. They hadn't even tried to acquire it officially. They just redrew the map and submitted it with a notarized seal from a friendly surveyor. That, my friends, is felony fraud. Valerie called in a geodetic expert to verify. Then she filed a report with the State Board of Land Surveyors. Within days, the board launched its own inquiry into the forged survey data, and the notary in question was suspended pending investigation. As for the sheriff's office, well, things weren't going well there either. Deputy Clark went on leave, and Officer Menard stopped showing up to scheduled shifts. Whispers started leaking that both men had accepted off-the-books payments from HOA discretionary funds. Valerie motioned to freeze Stone Point's bank accounts to preserve potential evidence. The judge granted it, pending an emergency hearing. That's when the threats began. I started getting anonymous phone calls, no caller ID, silence on the line. Then a dead raccoon was thrown into my yard one night, right beneath my bedroom window. The next morning, someone left a typewritten note inside my mailbox. Unsigned. You think you've won, but this is just the beginning. Back off. That was it. I handed everything to the local PD, not the sheriff's department. They took it seriously, assigning a patrol officer to my road for the first time in weeks. I also upgraded my home system, motion-detecting thermal cameras, reinforced locks, and a separate off-site backup for all footage. If they wanted to keep pushing, I was ready. The world was watching now. I wasn't just some stubborn guy with solar panels anymore. I was the guy exposing systemic corruption tied up in land fraud, police collusion, and HOA abuse of power, and I wasn't going anywhere. I didn't sleep the night before the final hearing. Not because I was nervous, those days were long gone, but because I was going through every piece of evidence one more time. Valerie had assembled a monstrous case file, annotated footage from 4 different angles, thermal scans showing no presence of anyone else on my property during either police visit, side-by-side comparisons of forged and original survey maps, transcripts of HOA board chats, notarized timelines, and an affidavit from Jacob Greer. Every page was a nail in their coffin. Court opened at 9 sharp. The room was packed. Journalists, residents from Stone Point, even a few of my own neighbors who had quietly supported me. Karen sat at the defense table, jaw clenched so tight I could see her cheek twitch from across the aisle. Her attorney looked like he hadn't slept either, but for very different reasons. The judge was no nonsense, a lean man in his 60s with a reputation for hating liars and loving paper trails. Valerie opened our side with a clear, methodical presentation of the timeline. The initial harassment, the illegal patrols, the forged boundary maps, the calls to police, the media fallout, and, most damning, the digital proof of intent to displace me. She didn't waste a word. Karen's defense tried to pivot, claimed it was all a misunderstanding, that the calls to police were made out of concern, and the forged maps were the result of clerical error by an outside contractor. But then the judge asked the magic question. If it was a mistake, why did your president write, "Let's try again Friday night"? Loud noise, maybe call a welfare check. Silence. Then came the hammer. The Deputy Attorney General, who had joined the case as an observer, stood and submitted a parallel complaint. The HOA had knowingly misused public police resources for private enforcement, falsified land documents, and bribed sworn officers. The criminal investigation was no longer speculative. It was now active, and arrest warrants were issued for Karen Blaylock, 2 other HOA board members, Deputy Clark, and Officer Menard. Karen stood up and screamed, "This is a witch hunt. He lives like a freak out there, recording everyone, spying on us. He doesn't belong in our community." The judge didn't flinch. He simply nodded to the bailiff. Karen was cuffed and escorted out of the courtroom in front of everyone. The final verdict came a week later. The HOA was dissolved by court order. Their assets, bank accounts, equipment, property were liquidated to pay fines, penalties, and restitution. I was awarded $1.1 million in compensatory damages plus legal costs. Valerie got herself a line of new clients just from that case alone. The remaining residents of Stone Point formed a new voluntary civic council with actual transparency and, most importantly, no jurisdiction over my land. As for me, I didn't move. I didn't sell. I didn't hide. I stayed. I built a new gate at the entrance, added steel bollards and proper lighting. Right beside it, I installed a sign etched in anodized aluminum, "Private property, not part of any HO." All incidents recorded. Trespassers will be questioned on camera. But I didn't stop there. Using part of the settlement, I founded a nonprofit called Home Safe. Its mission: offer legal and technical support to landowners being harassed, bullied, or manipulated by overreaching HOAs or corrupt private governance. We offer resources, referrals, even remote surveillance consultations. We're small for now, but growing. Turns out I wasn't alone. There were others, dozens, then hundreds, reaching out, asking how they could fight back too. So I helped them. And every time I pass that gate on my way home, I remember how far they pushed me and how much further I pushed back.